He wielded her clan sword to protect her, oblivious he now had to become her husband. The rain fell in sheets across the dueling grounds of Kethalar, turning the dark grey stone into a treacherous mirror that reflected the angry purple sky above. Riker Voss watched from beneath the shelter of a nearby overhang. His broad shoulders hunched against the chill. He hadn't planned on stopping on this backwater planet just a quick refuel before heading to his next contract, but the storm had grounded all flights. Now he found himself witness to what appeared to be some kind of ritual combat between locals. The crowd of violet-skinned aliens formed a tight circle around two combatants, their silver hair gleaming despite the gloom. Their murmurs rose and fell like the tide, a language his translator implant struggled to fully decode. Outsider, a growly voice spoke beside him. You should not linger here, this is clan business. Riker glanced down at the wizened alien elder, noting the elaborate silver markings that adorned his violet skin. Just waiting out the storm. My ship needs another hour before she's ready to fly. The elder-sized solid black orbs without pupil or iris narrowed. Then wait elsewhere. What happens here is not for foreign eyes, but Riker's attention had already shifted back to the duel. One fighter, clearly female by human standards, moved with exceptional grace despite her obvious exhaustion. Her opponent, a male nearly twice her size, pressed his advantage relentlessly. The female warrior's silver hair, longer than any Riker had seen among the locals, whipped around her as she parried a vicious strike. Who are they? He asked, ignoring the elders' warning. The elders sighed. The female is Lythi and barren, last daughter of a once great house. The male is Dreer Keth, champion of the Ascendant clan. He fights to claim her family's ancestral lands, and if she wins, she will not win, the elder stated flatly. Her clan has fallen too far. This is merely formality. As if to punctuate his words, Drakkar landed a punishing blow that sent Lari sprawling across the wet stone, her tight black combat suit accented with intricate silver straps that hugged her slender form was now torn in several places, revealing deep cuts that leaked indigo blood. The crowd roared its approval as Dreer circled his fallen opponent. Lythi struggled to rise, one hand still clutching her clan sword, a magnificent blade with elaborate engravings that seemed to glow with an inner light despite the gloom. Yield, daughter of nothing, Drar's voice boomed across the arena. Your father's blade deserves a stronger hand. I will die before I yield my family's honor. Lythi spat, though her voice trembled with pain. Something about her defiance struck a chord in Riker. He'd seen too many underdogs crushed by those with power. It was the story of half the planets in this sector. Before he could think better of it, he was moving, pushing through the crowd. Dreer raised his blade for a killing blow. No, stop, Lorothy cried out, but not at her opponent, at Riker. Too late. As Drar's blade descended, Riker snatched up Lorothy's fallen sword from beside her and intercepted the strike with a resounding clash of metal. The impact jarred his arm to the shoulder, but he held firm, his muscular frame absorbing the shock. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Darer stepped back, his four eyes widening in shock. This isn't your fight, human, he snarled. Seems unfair to kill someone who's already down, Riker replied, adjusting his grip on the sword. It felt strangely warm in his hand, almost alive. You fool, Lythi whispered, her voice a mix of horror and disbelief. Do you have any idea what you've done? Before Riker could respond, the elder he'd spoken to earlier pushed through the crowd, followed by several others in elaborate ceremonial robes. They stared at Riker with expressions ranging from shock to outrage to most disturbingly amusement. The blade has been claimed, the elder announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent arena, by ancient law unbroken. Since the first dawn, he who wields the clan's sword in defense of its bearer becomes bound to that bearer in the sacred bond of marriage. Riker blinked. What now? You have claimed the right to be Lottie and Varen's husband, the elder continued implacably. The duel is suspended. The rite of bonding must now commence. Riker looked down at Lorothy, who was staring at him with an expression that suggested she couldn't decide whether to thank him or stab him with the very blade he just used to save her. I was just trying to help, he said weakly. Help, she hissed, struggling to her feet. You've just bound yourself to a dying clan on a planet you know nothing about. The blade chooses human, and it has chosen you. There is no escape from this for either of us. As the implications sank in it, Riker felt the weight of 100 alien eyes upon him. He'd faced down pirates, corporate assassins, and hostile wildlife on a dozen worlds, but nothing had prepared him for this. He'd come to this planet for a simple refueling stop and somehow ended up engaged to a woman he'd never even spoken to. Well, he said finally, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes, this is going to make for one hell of a story if I live long enough to tell it. You can't seriously expect me to go Through with this, Riker muttered as he followed Larathai through the winding corridors of what she had tersely explained was her clan's ancestral stronghold, a massive structure carved directly into the face of a mountain. Despite her injuries, Larathi moved with determined grace, though Riker noticed how she occasionally steadied herself against the wall. The indigo blood from her wounds had dried to a dark crust against her violet skin. What I expect is irrelevant, she replied without turning. The blade chose you. That is all that matters. A sword can't choose anything, it's an inanimate object. This made her stop and turn, her silver hair swinging like a curtain up close. He could see that her eyes weren't entirely black as he'd first thought. Tiny flecks of silver danced within them like distant stars. The Invar and blade has been forged in the blood of my ancestors for 16 generations, she said, her voice low and intense. It carries the essence of our lineage. When you grasped it in defense of my life, it recognized something in you worthy of continuing our line. Riker ran a hand through his short brown hair. Look, where I come from, marriage requires at least a first date. Maybe dinner, definitely mutual consent. Where you come from is irrelevant now. She cut him off. You're here and you have invoked ancient law. My clan stands on the brink of extinction. Our territories are being seized, our people scattered. That duel was my last chance to preserve what little remains of our honor, and now a complex emotion flickered across her face. Now we have possibilities, unexpected ones. Before Riker could press further, they arrived at a set of massive doors inlaid with silver patterns that seemed to shift subtly in the dim light. Two guards stood at attention, their expressions hardening at the sight of Riker. The elders await, one said, not bothering to hide his contempt. The chamber beyond was circular, with a domed ceiling that revealed the stormy sky through sections of transparent crystal. 7 elderly Keth Valerians sat in a semicircle, their elaborate robes and silver facial markings denoting their status. The central figure, a female with hair so long it pulled on the floor around her, raised a gnarled hand as they entered. Approach, daughter of Invorn. Bring your chosen. Lythi straightened despite her injuries and walked forward with dignity. Riker followed, acutely aware of how out of place his weather-beaten flight jacket and cargo pants looked in this formal setting. High Elder Lottie bowed. I present Riker Voss of Earth, a human. The High Elder's voice dripped with disdain. You bring a human before the sacred circle and claim him as bondmate. I claim nothing, responded the blade chose. Murmurs rippled through the assembled elders. One male with particularly elaborate silver facial markings leaned forward. This is unprecedented. No outsider has ever wielded a clan blade, perhaps because no outsider has ever been foolish enough to interfere in clan matters. Another elder snapped. The High Elder raised her hand for silence. The law is absolute. If the blade accepted his touch in your defense, then the bond is formed. However, her gaze shifted to Riker. The question remains whether this human understands what he has committed himself to. With all due respect, Riker stepped forward. I saw someone about to be killed and I acted where I come from. That's just basic decency. Decency, the High Elder repeated the word as if tasting something unfamiliar, an interesting concept yet irrelevant. The blade does not recognize decency, it recognizes strength, honor and bloodline compatibility. Bloodline compatibility, Riker frowned. You mean yes, human? The blade would not have accepted your touch if your genetic structure was incompatible with continuing the Invar line. This is unexpected. A commotion at the chamber entrance interrupted them. Dreer Keth strode in, flanked by his own entourage. His massive frame seemed to fill the room with menace. This farce has gone on long enough, he boomed. The human interfered in sacred combat. The duel was not concluded. The duel became irrelevant the moment he claimed the blade, or the High Elder responded coolly. Dreer's four eyes narrowed to slits. I challenge the validity of this bond. The human knows nothing of our ways. He cannot possibly fulfill the duties of a clan husband. That the High Elder acknowledged as a legitimate concern. Lottie stepped forward. By law he has one full cycle of our moons to prove his worthiness. During this time he is under clan protection. A cycle. Draker laughed harshly. I'll need far less time than that to prove him unworthy. He turned his gaze to Riker. Human, do you even know what duties you have claimed? You must defend clan territories, participate in council. Sire strong offspring. Whoa, let's pump the brakes on that last part, Riker interrupted, earning confused looks from everyone but Larathai, whose translator apparently understood the idiom. The human will be instructed in his duties, Leroy stated firmly, and I will vouch for his capacity to learn. Bold words from the daughter of a fallen house. Dreer sneered. Very well, one cycle. Then we shall see if your human pet can stand as a true clan husband, or if he will flee back to the stars where he belongs. After Draker stormed out, the High Elder fixed Riker with a penetrating stare. You have much to Learn in very little time human your actions have consequences beyond what you can imagine. Story of my life. Riker muttered later as Larathai led him to what would apparently be his quarters. Riker finally asked the question that had been burning in his mind: why didn't you just let me leave? You could have told them I didn't know what I was doing. Larathai stopped, her expression unreadable in the dim corridor. Because the moment you wielded that blade you became my clan's last hope. Without you, Drar would have killed me today and the Unvar line would have ended with you. She hesitated. With you there is a chance, a small one, but more than I had this morning. A chance for what exactly? Her gaze met his fierce and unyielding. A chance to rebuild, to reclaim what was stolen from us, to ensure that my family's sacrifices were not in vain. She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the unfamiliar spice of her skin. You may not have chosen this, Riker Voss, but neither did I. We are bound now by blood and honor. The only question is whether you will run from that bond or embrace it. With that she turned and continued down the corridor, leaving Riker to wonder just what kind of storm he'd flown into and whether he had any hope of navigating his way through it again. Larathai commanded, her voice echoing through the training chamber. Riker exhaled slowly, raising the practice sword, a weighted replica of the clan blade that now rested in a ceremonial chamber. His muscles burned from 3 hours of continuous drills. Your stance is still wrong. She circled him critically. Lower your center, bend your knees more. On Earth we have this concept called taking a break. Riker grunted but adjusted his position nonetheless. 5 days had passed since the fateful duel. 5 days of intensive cultural and combat training that left Riker exhausted. The lunar cycle Larathai had mentioned translated to roughly 28 Earth days, meaning he had just over 3 weeks left to become proficient in skills the KTH Valerian spent lifetimes mastering. Breaks are for those who can afford them, Larathai replied, though she moved to a nearby bench and sat wincing slightly. Her wounds were healing but not as quickly as she pretended. Riker lowered the practice sword. You should be resting too, those cuts were deep. My physical condition is irrelevant compared to the task at hand, which is turning me into a proper clan husband in record time. He joined her on the bench. Look, I get that this is important to you, but there's only so much a human brain can absorb in one day. For a moment he thought she would argue, but instead she nodded. You're right, I've been overzealous in your training. Tell me about your father, Riker said, seizing the rare moment of personal conversation. Larathai was silent for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than he'd heard before. Theon Naren was the finest swordsman of his generation. He led our clan through the border wars and established alliances that kept us strong for decades. Her fingers traced an invisible pattern on the bench. But strength invites challenge. The Kaith clan had always envied our territories, especially the crystal mines in the northern reaches. What happened? Poison, she said flatly. Not honorable combat, not a formal challenge, just poison in his evening meal. By the time I returned from my military service he was gone and our clan was in disarray. Drar's father had already seized 2 of our outlying territories. Riker absorbed this and no one did anything. There must be some kind of planetary law. Lythis' laugh was bitter. The law is simple, the strong survive, the weak perish. Without my father's leadership we were seen as weak. One by one our allies abandoned us. So you challenged Drakkar to regain what was lost. She nodded. It was not my wisest decision, but it was the only option remaining. A young messenger entered, her silver hair cropped short. Honored Lyriki, the Council of 3 Clans requests your presence and that of your bond mate. Lythis stood abruptly. Now the council wasn't scheduled to convene for another 8 days. Clan Keth called for an emergency session. All houses must attend. After the messenger departed, Riker raised an eyebrow. I'm guessing this isn't good news. It's Drar's first move, Larathai confirmed, already moving toward formal attire. He's forcing a public evaluation before you're ready. The council chamber was a vast amphitheater carved from dark stone. 3 massive clan banners hung from the ceiling. The silver sword of Invar now faded, the crimson claw of Keith bright and dominant, and the blue spiral of Thal, the most neutral of the 3 major clans. Hundreds of Kath Valerians filled the tiered seating. Riker, dressed in formal in attire, felt like an exhibit in an alien zoo. Remember, Larathai whispered, speak only when directly addressed. Maintain eye contact to show respect and keep my hands visible at all times to show I'm not reaching for a weapon. Riker finished. I was paying attention during the etiquette lessons. At the center of the chamber, elevated on a circular platform, sat the heads of the 3 major clans. Drakkar represented KTH, his massive frame draped in ceremonial armor. Beside him a serene, ill-looking female Represented Clan Thal, and for Clan Neon where's your representative Riker? Whispered. You're looking at her. Larathai replied tightly, with my father gone I am the last of our bloodline old enough to sit on the council. The High Elder stood and raised her hands for silence. The Council of Three Clans is convened at the request of Clan Keth, who speaks for the petitioners. Dreer rose, his 4 eyes settling on Riker with contempt. I, Draker Keith, speak for my clan and for all who value our ancient traditions. 5 days ago an outsider interfered in sacred combat and claimed a clan blade through ignorance rather than right. Now we are asked to accept this human as a clan husband. He spat the word human like a curse. The law is clear, Lythi countered, her voice strong despite being outnumbered. The blade accepted him. The bond is formed. A clan in Varan acknowledges Rekervas as my rightful husband and a member of our house. A blade cannot choose an outsider who knows nothing of our ways. Dreer slammed his fist on the council table. The Thaw representative raised a slender hand. Perhaps we should hear from the human himself. All eyes turned to Riker. He straightened his shoulders, keenly aware that his next words could either strengthen or destroy Lythi's position. Members of the council, he began carefully, I won't pretend to understand all your customs or history. Where I come from, we don't have clan blades or ritual combat, but we do understand honor, loyalty, and keeping our word. He paused, meeting Dreer's hostile gaze. I didn't know what I was agreeing to when I picked up that sword, but I'm not in the habit of walking away from my commitments, even accidental ones. Fine words, Ducker sneered, but words alone prove nothing. If you truly wish to honor our ways, then prove your worth through action, not empty promises. What do you propose? The High Elder asked. Draker's lips curved in a predatory smile. The trial of 3 challenges, traditional, binding, and perfectly suited to test an outsider's worthiness. Lirith stiffened. That trial hasn't been invoked in 7 generations, perhaps because it hasn't been necessary until now, Dreer countered, unless your human bondmate wishes to concede his inadequacy now. Riker felt Lath's hand close around his wrist in warning, but he'd already had enough of Dreer's posturing. I accept, he said firmly. The chamber erupted in surprised exclamations. Lirithi's fingers dug painfully into his arm. You don't know what you've just agreed to, she hissed. Then I guess you'll have to explain it to me, he whispered back, because I'm not backing down from this bully. The High Elder raised her hands for silence. It is decided. The trial of 3 challenges will commence at first light tomorrow. The human Rikervas will face tests of body, mind, and spirit. Should he fail any challenge, the bond will be dissolved and Clan Near will forfeit all remaining territories to Clan Kathwat. Wrecker turned to Larathai in alarm. I tried to warn you, she muttered, her expression grim as the council adjourned. Dreer approached them. Enjoy your last night as a clan husband human. Tomorrow you will learn the true meaning of Keth's Valyrian strength. Back in Lythi's chamber, she explained the challenges: physical combat against a champion of Drakkars, choosing a mental test of strategy and knowledge of their history and laws, and a spiritual journey through the ancestral memories stored within the clan blade itself. And I have to do all 3 of these things tomorrow. Yes, and you must succeed at all 3 or everything is lost. Her voice softened. I should have explained this before. I was trying to protect you from the full weight of what you've stumbled into. For the first time, Riker saw genuine vulnerability in her expression. On impulse, he reached out and took her hand. Her skin was cooler than a human's, but soft, and she didn't pull away. I may not know much about your world, he said quietly, but I'm a quick learner, and I'm not going to let Dreer win without one hell of a fight. Something shifted in her gaze. Surprise, perhaps, or the first glimmer of genuine respect. Then we have much to prepare in very little time. Dawn broke over the mountain fortress, painting the dark stone with streaks of amber light in the ancient arena where Riker had first seen Larathai fight. Hundreds of KT Valyrians gathered to witness the trial of 3 challenges. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation. No outsider had ever undertaken the trials, and most spectators clearly expected to witness a humiliating failure. Riker stood at the edge of the combat circle, dressed in modified Enver battle attire. The traditional armor had been adjusted to fit his broader human frame, the deep purple fabric emblazoned with silver clan markings. Beside him, Lothi made final adjustments to his bracers. Remember what we practiced, she said quietly. Keith, Valyrian warriors rely on speed and precision. They'll expect you to fight like a human, all brute force and no finesse, so I'll surprise them, Wrecker replied, flexing his fingers around the practice sword's hilt. Despite his confident words, his mouth was dry. One night of intensive training couldn't possibly prepare him for what was coming. Larathi's fingers lingered on his arm. You don't have to do this, we could still find another way. There is no other way. And you know it, he said gently, besides I've survived worse odds. Her expression suggested she doubted that. But she nodded, then may the ancestors guide your blade. A horn sounded, signaling the beginning of the trial as Drakkar approached from across the arena, followed by a Valyrian male nearly as large as himself, clad in crimson battle armor for the first challenge. Drar announced to the assembly, I present Korarak's third blade of Clan Keth and undefeated in 17 ritual combats. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Wrecker glanced at Lorathi, whose expression had tightened. He's chosen their best close combat specialist, she whispered. Korax is known for disabling opponents rather than killing them. It's considered more skillful. Great, Wrecker muttered, so he'll just maim me instead of finishing the job. The High Elder stepped forward. The rules of combat are simple. The challenge ends when one combatant yields or is rendered unconscious. Lethal force is forbidden. She fixed Korax with a stern gaze at this last point, suggesting she understood Drar's choice all too well. Riker stepped into the circle facing his opponent. Korax towered over him, all four eyes narrowed in assessment. I've never fought a human before, he said, his voice surprisingly melodic for his size. I hear your kind bleeds red. I look forward to confirming this. Happy to disappoint you, Riker replied, settling into the stance Larathai had drilled into him through the night. The horn sounded again and Korax attacked with blinding speed. Only Riker's combat instincts, honed through years of mercenary work, saved him from being immediately overwhelmed. He parried the first strike and sidestepped, using the alien's momentum against him. Korax recovered instantly, spinning with inhuman grace to launch another assault. This time his blade slipped past Riker's guard, scoring a shallow cut across his ribs. A gasp went up from the crowd at the sight of crimson blood seeping through the purple fabric. First blood to Kith, Drar called out smugly. Riker circled wearily, reassessing his opponent. Lyberthi had been right. Trying to match a Keth Valyrian in speed and precision was suicide. He needed to fight like a human, but smarter. The next time Korax lunged, Riker didn't try to parry. Instead he stepped into the attack, accepting a glancing blow to his shoulder in exchange for getting inside the alien's guard before Korax could adjust. Riker slammed his forehead directly into the bridge of the Keth Valyrian's nose, a decidedly non-traditional move that sent indigo blood spring stunt. Silence fell over the arena, followed by outraged shouts from Clan Keth section. A dishonorable, someone yelled. No. The High Elder's voice cut through the commotion, unconventional but within the rules of combat. Korax wiped his face, his expression shifting from surprise to grudging respect. So humans do have some fight in them. The battle continued, each combatant adjusting to the other's style. Riker took more cuts but landed several solid blows of his own, fighting with a mixture of Laratha's teachings and the street fighting techniques he'd learned across a dozen worlds. As minutes stretched into a half hour, both fighters began to tire. In the crowd, Riker glimpsed Lottie watching intently, her posture rigid with tension. Something about her unwavering faith gave him a second wind. When Korax launched what should have been an overwhelming flurry of strikes, Riker found reserves of strength he didn't know he possessed. Ducking under a horizontal slash, he dropped his sword, grabbed Korax's wrist with both hands, and used the alien's own momentum to flip him over his shoulder, a basic human grappling move that no Keth Valyrian would expect. Korax crashed to the ground with bone-jarring force, and before he could recover, Riker had retrieved his blade and placed it at the alien's throat. He panted for a moment. Korax's four eyes blazed with defiance, then remarkably he smiled. I yield to the human bond, mate of Environ. The arena erupted in a mixture of cheers and disbelieving exclamations. Wrecker offered his hand, helping Korax to his feet in a gesture that clearly surprised the Keth Valyrian warrior. You fight strangely, Korax acknowledged, but effectively. Dacer's face was a mask of barely controlled fury as the High Elder stepped forward. The first challenge is complete. Wrecker Voss has proven his physical worthiness. She turned to Riker. Rest now. The second challenge begins at midday. As he left the combat circle, Lythi met him at the edge of the arena, her eyes bright with an emotion he couldn't quite identify. That was, she began, completely improvised. He finished with a tired grin. Your training helped, but I figured my best chance was to surprise him. You certainly did that. A smile tugged at her lips. I've never seen anyone headbutt a KE champion before. First time for everything. He winced as the adrenaline began to fade, making him acutely aware of his various cuts and bruises. In a private chamber adjacent to the arena, Lyrathi helped clean and dress his wounds. Her touch was clinical at first but gradually softened as she worked. Riker found himself Watching the play of emotions across her face, concern, relief, and something deeper that made his pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with combat. I didn't think you'd win, she admitted, quietly applying a healing salve to a cut on his shoulder. Thanks for the vote of confidence. It's not that her fingers lingered on his skin. Corax has defeated warriors with decades more training than you've had. What you did out there was remarkable. Riker caught her hand before she could withdraw it. Maybe your ancestors knew what they were doing when that blade chose me. Their eyes met, and for a moment the air between them seemed charged with unspoken possibilities. Lothi's gaze dropped to his lips, then back to his eyes, a flush of darker violet spreading across her cheeks. The moment was broken by a sharp knock at the door. Second challenge begins in 20 minutes, a voice called. Lathi pulled away, her composure returning like a mass sliding into place. We should prepare. The test of mind will be even more difficult for you than combat. As she turned to gather the materials they'd prepared through the night, Riker caught her wrist gently. Lottie, she looked back, vulnerability flickering briefly across her features. Thank you, he said simply, for believing in me even when you didn't think I could win. Something softened in her expression. Perhaps I'm beginning to understand why the blade chose you after all. The High Elder recovered her composure. First, the trial is complete. Riker Voss has passed all 3 challenges by ancient law and the will of the ancestors. He is confirmed as the rightful husband of Larathai Inverin and a true member of her house. A cheer rose from the small contingent of Inverin supporters, quickly joined by members of Clanthal and even some from lesser houses. Dakiker's face contorted with barely suppressed rage, but even he could not dispute the blade's transformation, a sign more powerful than any council ruling. As the formal ceremony concluded, Riker carefully placed the sword back on the altar, his mind still reeling from the communion experience. The assembled witnesses filed out, leaving only Lorathi and Riker in the sacred chamber. What happened? She asked softly, approaching him with wonder in her eyes. The blade has never responded like that to anyone in recorded history. Riker ran a hand through his hair, struggling to articulate the overwhelming experience. I saw them, all of them. Your ancestors, your father. Lorathi's breath caught. My father spoke to you, he said. The Invar line values heart above all else. Riker took her hands in his. And I think I finally understand what that means. In the crystal's blue glow, Lorathi's violet skin took on an ethereal quality. Her silver hair loosened from its formal arrangement, cascaded around her shoulders. Riker had thought her beautiful from the first moment he saw her fighting in the arena, but now seeing her vulnerability mixed with strength, he found her absolutely captivating. Lorathi, he said softly, I didn't choose this bond, but if I had known you then as I know you now, I would have chosen it freely. Her eyes widened, flecks of silver dancing in their depths. You cannot mean that our ways are not your ways. Our world is not your world. Maybe that's exactly why the blade chose me. He stepped closer. Maybe sometimes we need someone who sees things differently. For a moment she remained perfectly still, then with a decisiveness that characterized everything she did, Lorathi closed the distance between them and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, a crossing of boundaries neither had expected to traverse. Then something ignited between them, a recognition that transcended their physical differences. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. That was. Riker began not a traditional Keth Valian greeting, she finished with unexpected humor, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I'd hate to be too traditional, he murmured, drawing her back to him. This time their kiss deepened, awakening sensations that had been building since their first meeting. The world around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them in a bubble of blue light in ancient stone. When they finally separated, Larathai's expression had transformed. Gone was the guarded warrior, replaced by